स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः. Namaskar to all of you. Welcome to the study of Ramakrishna, the Great Master, Leela Prasanga, written by Sharadanandaji Maharaj. In the beginning, we will, for a short time, go through the life of Rani Rasmani. Then we will go to the introduction to the divine incarnation as a sadhaka, then to the proper life. While we were looking at the life of Rani Rasmani, now she is constructing the Dakshineshwar temple. The construction of the temple complex began in 1847, and it took more than 8 years to complete. Besides the main temple dedicated to the Divine Mother Kali, there was also to be a temple dedicated to Lord Krishna and 12 small temples dedicated to Lord Shiva. Rasamani spent 50,000 rupees for the land, 1,60,000 rupees, that is 160,000 rupees, for building an embankment along the river, so that we see that the river Ganga will be flowing. Sometimes in the rainy season, it will flood the whole thing. So if the embankment is not built, then the land there may go down and also it may damage the temple. So the very important thing before building any strong temple, a strong, very, very strong embankment on the bank of the river is a must. So she spent 50,000 rupees. Rani Rasmani spent 50,000 rupees for the land, then 160,000 rupees for building an embankment along the river, and 900,000 rupees for the temple complex. In addition, she spent 226,000 rupees for some property which was meant to be used as an endowment for the maintenance of the temple. So she did all the arrangements so that in future also, the service, whether Rani Rasmani is alive or not, in future, the services of Divine Mother has to go on. in a proper way. So she made endowment, land and money and everything so that it will go on very smoothly, the service of Divine Mother. One more thing we have to notice, there is the Divine Mother temple at the center. Then there is the Lord Krishna temple. Then we have the temple of Lord Shiva. So you can find it that in Hinduism, even from those days, there was no clash among the devotees of any deities. So they were all living in harmony. So all the time saints would come and always see that there is harmony inside Hinduism. But later on we can see when the British came and other Islamic invaders came, they used to rule the country by their principle, divide and rule. So then they used to make such things very big and create division amongst the devotees of different people, give money to different people and create all those things. So there would be people who would do anything for money. So that would be written as history. So many wrong things have been written in the history written by the Europeans about India. So you can see it here in the practical thing that in the same complex, they have the temple dedicated to the Divine Mother. She could have not built a Krishna temple or Shiva temple. It would be just a Kali temple because she was a devotee of Mother Kali. So, but see, the harmony of religion existed all the time. Even now it is there. So there is no clash between anybody, any devotees. So that harmony is always there. So Lord Krishna temple is built, then Lord Shiva temple, then Divine Mother's temple, everything is ready. Now we shall go a little forward because the rest of the things, so many things are being repeated in the life of Ramakrishna itself. So which is not there, such things can be mentioned here. Sri Ramakrishna, who was then 19 years old, was present at the dedication ceremony. So we all know that he did not eat any of the offered food. We gave an explanation for all that steadfastness of the scriptures and the illiberality in the last class. Instead, he bought some puffed rice from the market and ate it before walking back to Calcutta to sleep. The next day, when Sri Ramakrishna returned to Dakshineshwar, Ramakumar asked him to stay, but he refused. He again went back to Calcutta, expecting his brother to return shortly also. After a week, Ramakumar still had not returned, so Sri Ramakrishna went to Dakshineshwar. This time, Ramakumar told him that he had accepted, at the request of Rasamani, the post of the priest of Kali, and that he would close his school. Sri Ramakrishna at last agreed to stay at Dakshineshwar with Ramkumar, but he continued to continued to cook his own food with Ganga water. He followed his rules firmly and with great faith in the beginning of his sadhana. 3 months after the ceremonial opening of the temple, an accident took place in the Krishna temple. What was that accident? Kshetranath, the priest, slipped and fell while carrying the image of Krishna from the altar to the bedchamber. So in India, most of the temples, if the image is already fixed, then they would keep a small image and they would carry that image. And the whole day, the ceremonies will be done. All the ceremonies in the Indian temple is like that. Suppose you have a very revered person in your house. How do you treat him from morning to evening? So you will wake him up early in the morning, then ask him to take bath. Then you will give water for him to wash hands, face, give him the toothbrush, give him the paste. Then after that, you will provide him hot water, then little refreshment. Then you will give him, make arrangement for the bath. Then he will give him breakfast. Then he will make ready for him for all the things. So music, so many other things for if a revered person or a king, emperor comes to your house, how do you look after? Likewise, the Lord who is there in the temple, the image and other things will be thought of as a living king there, the emperor of this world. And from morning, so Prabhata, waking up the Lord by singing and everything, the music, sweet music everywhere. Then the services like giving the water to wash his hand, feet, that is called Achamana, then Padya, Arghya, everything will be given. The service will be done from the morning to the evening, giving him noon food. then the lunch, then evening snacks, then night again there will be supper. Everything just like a human being thinking that a great guest or a great king is there. They will do all those things, services from morning to evening. So in the night, when it is time to sleep, they will take this image. If it is not fixed to the altar, they will take that image and there will be a separate bedroom. So they will make to the Lord to sleep on the bed and make all the arrangement just like they will put on the mosquito curtain. So just like any other great human being, they will look after him with great service. So now this priest, Kshetranatha, so he's carrying that image of Radhakanta or Lord Krishna. So while he was carrying that to be put the Lord to sleep in the bedchamber, there was some water lying down, maybe through mistake of somebody. Somebody might have spilled some water while cleaning. So the priest slipped, stepping on that water, fell while carrying the image of Krishna from the altar to the bedchamber. And as a result, one leg of the image was broken. The image leg of that Lord Krishna leg was broken. This accident caused quite a commotion because people in India, they think, suppose something happens to the image or some mishap happens, they think it's a bad omen and they will feel that future something might happen. So there was a lot of commotion. So it was considered to be an inauspicious omen. The priest was immediately dismissed from the job because of his negligence, and Pandits were called together to give their opinions. Great scholars in the Agama Shastras and who were experts in the image worship and installation of the image and all the signs of worship, they were all called together to give their opinions as to what should be done about the image. They unanimously agreed that a broken image cannot be worshipped. There is the law of there is written in the scriptures that a broken image cannot be worshipped. Another image should be installed and the old one immersed in the Ganga. So this decision made Rani Rasmani very despondent. She did not want to throw away the image which she had worshipped with love and devotion. At Mathur's suggestion, she consulted Sri Ramakrishna, who was then 19 years old. He was there living in Dakshineshwar. So Mathur Nath Vishwas was the son-in-law of Rani Rasmani and just like a right-hand man who was taking care of everything. Now, this Mathur went to Ramakrishna and consulted him on this matter. You know that even from childhood, Ramakrishna was so intelligent and lot of wisdom. Even great scholars would not come to conclusion. And when they went to this Gadadhar as a small child of 7 or 8, he would give them such solutions that people will be mesmerized and surprised. At that age, he had so much of wisdom. So that would be the exact solution for all those problems. So now Mathurnath Vishwas went to Ramakrishna, then aged 19, and consulted Sri Ramakrishna. And now Ramakrishna in an ecstatic mode. You know, he used to regularly go to that Bhava Samadhi. So when he used to go to that Bhava Samadhi or in that higher concentration of the mind, he would be in touch with his real self, that is Gadadhara Vishnu. So the answer would come from within, from the Lord himself. So now he went into answered in an ecstatic mode. What was that? See now the scriptures. What are the scriptures? Scriptures are the experiences while the many sadhakas, the saints, the sages were going on the path of spirituality or religion. They will have had so many experiences, visions, and all those things recorded, put together in the form of a book in the chronological order. It's called scriptures. So all the scriptures are nothing but the experiences of different saints and rishis and sages. So now the scripture there is telling that a broken image is not to be worshipped and it has to be immersed in Ganga. A new image has to be installed. But now the Avatara himself, they are the saints. The sages, they have got, while they are progressing in spiritual life, they get so many revelations. And all that revelations are called mantras. Whatever they get, the deity, they see the deity, they get the mantra in golden letters, just like when Vishwamitra did lot of tapasya, austerities. Vishwamitra's earlier name was Kaushika Maharaja. He was a king. He was not a Brahmana. By birth, he was not a Brahmana, but he was a Kshatriya. He's a warrior. So he did lot of austerities. Then after that, the whatever we call the Savitri mantra or Gayatri mantra, it was the meter, Gayatri Chandas. So it was seen to him in vision, in golden letters, all that what we recite, Om Bhut Bhuvasvaha, Tat Savitur Varenyam, all those mantra was revealed to him in golden letters. So he was given, why did he do the tapas? So that he has to help all the people of this world. So he got this, which will help everybody. So all of us, we chant it. It's very, very sacred mantra. That's why when he did so much of good to all the world, he got the name, the Rishi, Vishwamitra. Mitra means friend. Vishwa means the whole universe. He became the friend of the whole universe. Earlier his name was Kaushika Maharaja. His name was Kaushika. So now he became Vishwamitra because he gave that great thing. So like that, all the rishis in their higher state of mind, spirituality, while they used to go in deep samadhi and high concentration of mind, these mantras would be revealed at different stages of evolution. All that recorded together is called the Vedas or the Puranas or whatever. So they're all revelations to the saints and seers. So now here, the Avatara Purusha himself is overruling some of the statement there when it is necessary, when the Avatara himself has come here. In ecstatic mode, Sri Ramakrishna is telling, now giving a logical answer, a beautiful way. So what was that? If any one of the Rani's son-in-law, Ramakrishna in a very ecstatic mode, high state of concentration, is an Avatar Purusha. He is the incarnation of the Lord Gadadhar Vishnu. Shiva has come together. Now Divine Mother is acting through him. So now he told in that ecstatic mood, if any one of the Rani's son-in-law were to break a leg, would she forsake him and put someone else in this place? What a beautiful answer. Can you think? Can you understand? Go deep into the depth of the statement of Sri Ramakrishna. See, we are treating the image not as a stone image, but as a person, personal God. So we are doing all the service from the morning to the night as if we are looking after that great emperor of this, creator of this universe. So now suppose now he's giving the example directly to the Rani. If Rani, she's having 3 son-in-laws. If any one of the son-in-law breaks his legs due to some accident and there's a fracture, will you forsake that son-in-law and then bring in a new son-in-law? Highly impossible. The same case here too. So would she forsake him and put someone else in his place? Wouldn't she rather have him cured by a doctor? Let it be the same in this case too. A wonderful understanding, a wonderful insight. Met the image and worship it as before. It's a revelation because until then, that was even now many people do that. Later on, when Ramakrishna went away from Dakshineshwar, they replaced it with a new image and that old one is kept there because they thought that that is against the scripture. So whatever it might be, but now you can see the insight of Gadadhar Ramakrishna in that age of 19. What a beautiful insight, what a beautiful spiritual solution he gave. At Madhu's suggestion, she consulted Sri Ramakrishna and he answered in an ecstatic mood. If any one of the Rani's son-in-law were to break a leg, would she forsake him and put someone else in his place? Wouldn't she rather have him cured by a doctor? Let it be the same in this case too. Mend the image and worship it as before. This simple, satisfying, and logical answer surprised the Pandits, the scholars. But the Rani and Mathur were delighted. Sri Ramakrishna himself. Now, we all know that Ramakrishna. So we are studying all the masters. We were asking, what is the education of Sri Ramakrishna? He had so many master degrees. So we have, from the beginning of the life, we are seeing from the childhood what were the expertise, mimicry, singing, storytelling, all that masteries. Now we knew that he could paint very well. He was expert in painting, and he was a very good through the mud images he used to make of gods and goddesses. Then he was a good sculptor. Now that mastery in his sculpting came now to use So now they told Ramakrishna, Gadadhar, to do the mending of that image which has been broken. Then he is already an expert in that. So now let us see what will happen. The simple, satisfying, logical answer surprised the Pandits, but the Rani and Mathur were delighted. Sri Ramakrishna himself skillfully mended the image at the request of the Rasmani, at the request of Rasmani and Mathur. Sri Ramakrishna then, now he took that inside. God alone knows what, and gum or something. Now we can see the Fevicol or Fevibond to stick anything. I don't know what Ramakrishna had, that gum there. He put that leg, broken leg, in such a way, he mended it and he pasted it in such a way. Nobody could understand. Even now you can go and see that in Dakshineshwar, in the Krishna temple, by the side of the Krishna temple, it is maintained there. So it has been so nicely done. Nobody, even if you do even the minutest observation, you cannot understand that the leg was broken and it was mended by Sri Ramakrishna and pasted in such a way. God alone knows what Sri Ramakrishna did. It was a miracle. So he pasted it in such a way that even now you cannot understand. You can go to Dakshineshwar and see that it is there for everybody to see. So Ramakrishna did it in a wonderful way. Now, at the request of Rasmani and Mathur, Sri Ramakrishna then agreed to become the priest of the Krishna temple. Ramkumar's health was now beginning to fail. With Rasmani's approval, he began to teach Sri Ramakrishna the worship of the Kali. It's very, very difficult to do the worship of the Kali. You should be initiated. You should know that. You should be trained very well. It's not so easy. You cannot do any mistakes. So Ramkumar, he was an expert and adept in that puja of Mother Kali. So his health was failing because he was becoming old. He began to teach, and a lot of work has to be done in the Kali temple. A lot of work will be there. The rituals and everything will be very taxing. So the puja and the rituals and so many other things. He's becoming old. So his health began to fail. Now he began to teach Sri Ramakrishna the worship in the Kali temple, how to worship Mother Kali and everything. His brother Ramakumar is teaching him. A more responsible and more difficult duty to do the worship of Lord Krishna is very simple. But Mother Kali's, through the tantric means, is very, very tough and complicated. While he himself took charge of the Kali Krishna temple, but within a year, Ramkumar died suddenly while away on some business for a few days. This unexpected turn of the event was a great shock to Sri Ramakrishna. Ramkumar had been like a father to him, for he had been only 7 years old when their father had died. Sri Ramakrishna continued to perform the worship of Divine Mother in the temple, but gradually, the God intoxicating mood possessed him. He felt the transitoriness of the world, and his sole desire was to have the vision of the Mother. His unusual behavior and strange manner of worship were soon noticed by the temple staff. They were convinced that Sri Ramakrishna had become mad and that he should be removed from his duties. A message to that effect was sent to Rasmani and Mathur. One day, Mathur paid an unexpected visit to the temple and secretly observed Sri Ramakrishna's method of worship. He saw how Sri Ramakrishna decorated the Divine Mother, talked to her, fed her, and fanned her as if she were a living person. Mathur was very much impressed and ordered the temple officials not to disturb or interfere with Sri Ramakrishna's worship in any way. Now, while we are doing the worship of the Lord, in the beginning stages, because we have not attained so much of devotion to the Lord, we have to follow all the rules and regulations. So that's why in worship and in devotion, the first stage is called, because we have not developed intense devotion, we are still far away from the God, it's called Vaidhi Bhakti. Vaidhi Bhakti means according to Vidhi Vidhana, rules and regulations you have to follow. Because what is that? All the rituals are made by rishis and munis and our saints in such a way that if you follow that rituals nicely, then you will start getting slowly that intense devotion. You will progress in that devotion and you will become an adept and you will get that intense devotion in your heart. It will develop. It's a gradual process. So in the beginning, it's called, at the starting of our spiritual life, we have to follow all these rules and regulations. So it's called Vaidhi Bhakti. Vidhi Vidhana, you have to follow so many rules and regulations. After that, when you go forward, you become so intensely devoted to the Lord You will forget all those rules and regulations. Then you will start treating Lord with so much of intense love. Then all rules and regulations will be forgotten. You'll be just loving God and you will be doing the loving service from the heart. It will be overflowing. So now Vaidhi Bhakti is gone. Then it is Ragatmika Bhakti. The next stage is called Ragatmika Bhakti. It overflows from the heart. Then you will be treating Lord as if, suppose you have the child in your house. You will not go on following rules and regulations. Yeah, in the beginning, for some extent, you will be looking after that because the doctor will tell that has to be done, this has to be done. When your love increases towards that child, then you will be overflowing. Every moment, you will be doing the service to the child in such a way. So it is Ragatmika with attachment. So that is called Ragatmika. Now, Ramakrishna didn't need, yes, he was doing all the devotion and other things already from childhood. He has developed all those Vidhi-Vidhana, the rules and regulations. Now, when he took up the worship of Mother Kali, it was Ragatmika with attachment, real love, true devotion. He started worshipping Mother Kali. So he didn't want to just to see that as an image and do that. He wanted to see Mother live. He wanted to talk to her, feed her, do all those things. So all his devotion turned in that way. But for the outside people who do not know, we can't understand. They think that everything has to be followed according to the rules and regulations. So they were all thinking that, oh, Ramakrishna has gone mad. So he's breaking all the rules and regulations, but they cannot understand the intensity of his devotion. I'll just give you an example. We will stop it here and go to the next introduction. But before that, when I was telling about this Ragatmika Bhakti, I just want to give an example for that. So in Belur Math, the Durga Puja is done in a very big way. So at that time, the president of the order was Mahapurush Maharaj, Shivanandaji, the Sangha, the whole, this thing, Ramakrishna Mahasangha. The president was none other than Shivanandaji Maharaj, or very lovingly called as Mahapurush Maharaj. He was a direct disciple of Ramakrishna, brother disciple of Swami Vivekanandaji and Brahmanandaji. So now when he was the president, this very big event of Durga Puja was going on. Everywhere festivity, lot of puja. So now the duty of the brahmacharis and other things, sannyasins, elderly sannyasins, will be taking care of all the responsible things. And puja also has to be done by the brahmachari, because sannyasins don't have the right to do the worship or havan in the Vedic method, because it is with desires. So only they can do without desires. Some of the pujas, simple pujas can be done. So the sannyasins don't have the right to do Durga Puja. So only brahmacharis have to do. So many brahmacharis are doing the puja there. One of the brahmachari, by mistake, it's not by mistake, one of the elderly sadhus saw, he was preparing the betel roll for Divine Mother. So it is to be offered. He was preparing the betel roll, the pan, betel leaf and the thing, other things will be, spices will be added, the betel nut will be added, then the calcium chun will be added, little, and he was making that betel roll for Divine Mother's offering. But the senior sadhu saw, even before the offering, while preparing, he went the place and he was eating that before the offering. And the Swami got very angry. What is this? Even before giving that offering, that pan roll or that, I just want to request, somebody has put on the mic and it is disturbing me. They're sneezing and coughing and so many other things. I lose my concentration. Please, can you put off the loudspeaker or mic? I'm hearing so many sound from the beginning of the class. I request whoever has not put off the mic has to put off that. Or the sound, that so many sound is coming from behind, that can be stopped. I request you earnestly to stop that sound. Okay, I will continue now. So now that brahmachari started taking that pan. This elderly Swami saw that and was very angry. What is this? You are eating that pan even before offering to Mother. So the sound is still continuing. Please, will you put off the sound? I'm hearing that sound. It is taking away my focus and concentration. Please put off that mic. So the brahmachari was taken, I can hear the phone ringing. I can hear so many sounds. It is not allowing me to continue the class. It is disturbing my concentration. Please put off the mic. Okay. So the Swami dragged that brahmachari to the president, that is Mahapurush Maharaj. He was a realized soul. He was a Gnani. He was a Brahmagnani. So he dragged him and told, Swamiji, Maharaj, throw him out of the order. He should be put out of the ashrama. He should never be allowed to continue as a brahmachari and given the sannyas because he has done such a grave. What is the problem? He has done like this. He has taken that prasad even before offering. He was preparing the betel roll, started eating this. So that is the greatest of the blasphemy he has done. He has insulted mother by giving the juta, the already eaten one. So you have to throw him away from the order. Then Mahapurush Maharaj thought for a while, smiled and told, wait, don't be very eager to put him out of the order. Why do you want to throw him out? First, let us hear what he wants to tell. So then he asked that brahmachari with love and affection, my dear brahmachari, what was that? This is because he could understand. He was a realized soul. He could understand the mind of the brahmachari. What was the reason you did that? Why did you eat that before offering to mother? Then that very young boy, brahmachari, innocently told, Maharaj, I was applying all that thing and putting that chun. That is the calcium. If it is applied too much, what happens is it will burn the tongue of the person who eats it because the calcium has that pungent thing and it will burn the tongue. So I just wanted to test it, whether it is proper. The mother, we are going to feed all those things. The mother should not be fed such a thing which will be very pungent and which should not harm my Mother Durga's mouth and tongue. It should not burn my tongue. So before that, I just tested and it was found right. And then I washed my hands and I just wanted to offer it. So I did it out of devotion. I wanted to see that my mother should not be given the pungent one and it should burn her tongue. So he did it out of devotion. But externally, people couldn't understand it. They thought he's doing the blasphemy, he's eating it beforehand. Who can understand going into the depth of his mind? But because he was a Gnani, he was a realized soul, a perfect soul, Mahapurush Maharaj could understand what is the feeling. Mother Durga also has shown. So Mother Durga allowed that. So that is a little higher after going forward in spiritual life. By the beginning itself, you should not do all those things. Then from tomorrow, don't go start eating yourself and then offering it to the Lord. No, that should come in a natural way. It should not be forced. Nothing should be forced upon. So in the beginning, it should be vidhi vidhana with rules and regulations. The scriptures have to be followed very, with great care. Then after, when you progress in spiritual life, it should come naturally. So Swamiji has told like that. We have read in the life. So it was a brahmachari and Mahapurush Maharaj just told that. So we will now first eat everything and then offer it to the Lord. No, please don't do that mistake. Because when you grow into the higher stages of spiritual life, it will come naturally. It is out of exuberance of devotion. Ragatmika bhakti that comes. So in the beginning, don't try to, literal imitation should not be done. You cannot imitate somebody. It should come naturally. The devotion and the things should come naturally. But you should know the spirit. I'm just telling these incidents, why Ramakrishna did all those things, puja in that way, that manner, so that you should understand. That is Ragatmika Bhakti. So he has already passed the primary and degree and master degree, has gone to the PhD level in devotion or postdoctorate level. So we have to pass through this primary, kindergarten, primary, then higher primary, then degree and master degree, then go to the PhD level. So we are at that level. So when we come to that level, then it will automatically come. No, you need not force it. It should be automatic. So now we shall come to the next aspect of our study. What is that? The introduction to the divine incarnation as a sadhaka. We were looking at that. So we shall go through that introduction written by Swami Sharadanandaji Maharaj about Sri Ramakrishna as a sadhaka. Sadhaka means spiritual aspirant. Divine incarnation as a spiritual aspirant. Now, Swami Shardanandaji Maharaj is telling, one day at Dakshineshwar, we had a long discussion with one of our friends. That is Swami Niranjanananda. At that time, he was not the Swami, and this Swami was also not Swami Shardananda. So Niranjan, his Purvashrama name was Niranjan. Then Shardanandaji Maharaj Purvashrama name was Sharat Chandra Chakravarti. So now he's telling at the time, the future Swami Niranjanananda, that at that time he was a youth, a young boy, who's coming there to Ramakrishna. They had discussion. What was that discussion upon? The discussion was on free will and predestination. So we were talking in the last class about how much of free will any human being or living being has, and how much of is the God's will. Predestination is God's will, providence. And not being able to arrive at any conclusion, both of them were talking for a long time. So they talked and talked about that free will. How much of free will do we have? How much of it is God's grace and everything? They had a discussion and it went on. So they couldn't come to any conclusion. So this conversation or argument was going on in Dakshineshwar. So now they thought, why should we argue? We shall go to Master. Master is there. We shall go to his room and pose our problem to him. He will give us the solution. So went to meet for a solution of our difficulty. The Master was amused at our boyish discussion at first. But then after that, first he was took it as a joke, or very smilingly took that. He was amused, but then added seriously. What was that serious note Ramakrishna told? He told, is there anyone who has free will or anything like that? Is there anyone who has free will or anything like that? It is by God's will alone that everything has always happened and shall always happen. It is by God's will alone that everything has always happened in the past and will also happen now, and it will happen in future too. Man understand it in the long run. But then something has to be added, because we have not risen to that state. This is the reality. But at present, we do not understand the will of the Lord. We think everything is happening by my own will. So how those people who have not risen to that level to see everything, in everything, every action, that is God's will. So man understands it in the long run, but then something has to be added. Just as when a cow is tied to a post with a long tether. A cow, now Ramakrishna is explaining that same tough argumentation. This has been happening from time immemorial. So maybe from the beginning of the creation or beginning of the human history, this argument is going on. Nobody has come to any conclusion. But here, today, by Ramakrishna's teaching, you are getting a conclusion. You are getting the doubt solved. What is that beautiful thing? He's giving the example of a cow, and through that explaining what is the portion of your free will and what is the the place of God's grace and God's will. Very well explained. Let us see what Ramakrishna has to tell through that example. Now let us take, there is a cow. The owner of the cow, the master of the cow, has taken and tied it with a tether, with a rope. So just as when the cow is tied to a post, so that it will not go here and there with a long tether, it can stand at a distance of 1 cubit from the post, or it can go up to the whole length of the tether according to its choice. So too it is with the free will of man. So now the master of this universe, the Lord, has given us little free will in this human birth. He has given intelligence, he has given strong hands and legs, he has given all the senses, the mind, intellect and ego. With this freedom, with this strength, so you can make use of the opportunity and get so many things in life, achieve so many goals in your life, and realize your own self or whatever you want. You have different goals. So that much is only the freedom. Just like the cow has been given the tether or that rope, so it can stand near the post and eat the grass, or it may go even up to the end of that rope. So that much is the freedom for you. That is free will. You cannot do beyond that. So you have limited freedom. So if you make use of that limited freedom, what will happen? So we will see it can stand at a distance of 1 cubit from the post, or it can go up to the whole length of the tether according to its choice. So too is with the freedom. So too is with the free will of man. A man ties a cow with the idea, let her lie down, stand, or move about as she likes within that area. Similarly, God has given man some power, and he has also given him freedom to utilize it as he likes. That is why man feels himself free. That is why he feels that I am free. I can do anything. But the rope is fastened to the post. And mark this, if anyone prays to him in all humility, he may remove him to another place and tie him there. Just like the cow, the master can see this cow is very active. It's eating a lot of grass and it will give good milk. So it will be beneficial. Then what will the master do? He will take that cow after it has grazed in that radius, in that circumference of that tether. So he will take to another place and tie that, give it more freedom. Then again he see the cow has eaten all that. So it is a very good yielding cow. So he will take to another place, little more freedom. Then finally when he sees that it is a very good cow, so he'll let it free. So like that, even in our case, the little freedom we have got, if you make use of that and do good to the society, the Lord knows, oh, it's a very good milk yielding cow, means it will be very helpful to the world, to the other human beings. So you utilized your freedom to do good to the world, to the society, to the people. So then the Lord will give you more freedom. Then again, you make use of that freedom nicely, properly. Then do more work and utilize that and reach your goal. Then the Lord will give you more freedom. Then finally, he will let you free. That is freedom. You become one with God. So that is the example. So how much of freedom has been given? If you utilize that freedom, then you get more freedom. Everything is given by, the freedom is given by God, and total freedom also will be given by God, and you become one with God. So beautifully, Ramakrishna is using this example of the cow, the master, and the tether, the rope, and the post, and nicely explaining what the position of free will of human being and the God's will. So it's so nicely explained. I will again go through that because it's very, very important. Everybody has this question: how much of free will I have? How much of it is God's will? So you can see it again. I'm going to read it. Is there anyone who has free will or anything like that? It is by God's will alone that everything has always happened and shall happen. Man understands it in the long run, but then something has to be added. Just as when a cow is tied to a post with a long tether, it can stand at a distance of 1 cubit from the post, or it can go up to the whole length of the tether according to its choice. So too, it is with free will of man. A man ties a cow with the idea, let her lie down, stand, or move about as she likes within that area. Similarly, God has given man some power, and he has also given him freedom to utilize it as he likes. That is why man feels himself free. You feel free because that freedom has been given by the Lord. There is one beautiful song that written by the Ram Prasad or some other saint in Bengal. So Ramakrishna used to sing that, Sakali Tomar Ichha, Ichha Mai Mata Tumi. So, Mother, everything is going on according to your will. Tomar Ichha. Ichha Mai, then you are that, the one who is running everything, the show, this world. But human beings very foolishly think that when she is doing everything, the whole world is run by her. We think that we are doing everything. So, yeah, we do it. You think there is no problem, but you are doing everything. There is a song always Ramakrishna used to sing, Ram Prasad song, Shakali Tomar Ichha. So, similarly, God has given some power, and he has also given him freedom to utilize as he likes. That is why man feels himself free. But the rope is fastened to the post, and mark this, if anyone prays to him in all humility, he may remove him to another place and tie him there, or he may lengthen the tether or even remove it completely from the neck. That is complete freedom. That is, we get realization of God. Then we understand our real nature. So that is complete eternal freedom. So thus instructed, we asked, is it then that man has no duty or responsibility in the matter of practicing spiritual disciplines? Then why should we practice spiritual disciplines and all those things, duties and regulations? We can just be quiet if everything is God's will. So that question was asked here. These are all the questions which rises in our mind. And through the question and argumentation of Niranjan and Sharat Chandra Chakravarti, Ramakrishna is answering all these things for us. So thus instructed, we asked Ramakrishna, is it then that man has no duty or responsibility in the matter of practicing spiritual disciplines? Can he say, whatever I do is according to his will, then escape? Many people do that. They will tell, I didn't do that. It was done by God. It's the will of the God. I was forced by God to do that. So what shall I do? So you may do all the things, then you tell, I didn't do that. God made me, forced me to do that. Isn't it everything going on according to the will of the Lord? Whatever I do is according to his will. The master replied, of what avail is it merely to say so? Do you really feel it? Of what avail is it merely to say so? They are empty words. If you really have attitude that everything is done by God, then it is true. But you just quote it, that's all. So of what avail is it merely to say so? They are empty words. Is there any use telling? There is no thorn. It is not pricking. So suppose your leg has been pierced by a thorn. You go on telling there is no thorn. It's not pricking. But you are feeling the pain, isn't it? Is there any use telling there is no thorn? It is not pricking. When you actually cry out, started on touching the thorn. If men were free to practice sadhana, all would have undertaken it. If men were free to practice sadhana, that spiritual practices, all would have undertaken it. But how is it they can't? Why do many people out of the millions and billions of people, only few take to sadhana spiritual practices to attain God? Only few, hand few. Why others are not taking? It's not in their hand. It's only with the will of the Lord. So if men were free to practice sadhana, he would have undertaken it immediately. But how is it that they can't? There is, however, one thing, it does not give one more power. What is that? If the little that is given is not properly used, he will not give one more power to us, freedom to us, until we utilize the given freedom properly. Whatever freedom has been given to us, if we utilize it properly, then ask for more, you get it. But it has been now, suppose the cow, the owner of the cow sees that that cow doesn't eat properly. It's just sleeping there in that freedom given to it, but it makes sound, amba, amba, mo. Then the owner of the cow will think, oh, it's a lazy cow. It doesn't eat much and it will not give milk. So it is not using the freedom given to it properly. So it goes away, it doesn't give anything more freedom to it. Because still yet there is so much grass to be eaten. But that cow which is hardworking and utilizes the freedom, and then it will be beneficial to the creation or to the society. Lord gives more freedom. So that's what Sri Ramakrishna is telling so nicely. But how is it they can't? There is, however, one thing. It does not give one more power if the little that is given is not properly used. This is why individual effort and perseverance are necessary. That is why individual effort, self-effort, and perseverance are necessary. Don't you see? Everyone has to make some effort, however small, before he gets God's grace. When one does so, the experiences due to be undergone in 10 lives will come to fruition in one. Now you can again note it. We'll go back and see. Don't you see? Everyone has to make some effort, Ramakrishna is telling, however small, before he gets God's grace. When one does so, the experiences due to be undergone in 10 lives will come to fruition in one. And man will attain to spiritual realization immediately. Again, I will read it. It's very, very important. please note it, take it to your heart. Don't you see, everyone has to make some effort, however small, before he gets God's grace. So you get God's grace only by putting in yourself effort. When one does so, that is, you put effort to realize God or whatever for that sake, when one does so, the experiences due to be undergone in 10 lives will come to fruition in one, and man will attain to spiritual realization immediately. But one has to make some effort. Then Ramakrishna tells a story. Listen to a story. So I'll complete that story and I'll go to the life of Sri Ramakrishna, because we are taking little by little to see what is the introduction to the divine incarnation as a sadhaka. So now we will see what is the story told by Sri Ramakrishna in relation to this particular thing. Let us listen to a story. Sri Ramakrishna is telling that story. Vishnu, who eternally sports in Goloka or Vaikuntha, for some reason cursed Narada. Let us not go into the reason and other things why he cursed Narada. For some reason he cursed Narada, that he should go to hell. Narada's anxiety knew no bounds. He was very much upset because Lord himself has cursed him to go to hell. There's no escape. He has to undergo that. The Lord has cursed him. Vishnu has cursed him. He sang hymns in his praise and pleased him. Now suppose mother or father is about to punish you for your mistakes. Then you go and pray to them, cry in front of them. The heart of mother will melt, and then she will reduce the punishment or something like that. So now like that, our great Rishi Narada, he sang hymns in praise and pleased Lord Vishnu. Then he said, "O Lord, I wish to know what and where hell is and how many kinds of hell are there." Now, the words and the curse of the Lord cannot be untrue. It has to be happen. It has to happen. So now, what did Narada do? Narada asked the Lord, "O Lord, I wish to know what and where hell is and how many kinds of hell there are. Please be gracious to tell me all about it." Now, he has to make true what Vishnu's words were. So then Vishnu then drew on the ground with a piece of chalk heaven, earth, and hell as they were situated and said, "This is heaven and this is hell." Narada said, "Is that so? My experience of the suffering of hell can then be undergone here as well." So saying, he rolled on the hell drawn on the ground and got up and bowed down to the Lord. Vishnu smiled and said, "What's that? Can that be suffering hell?" Narada replied, "Why not, Lord? Are you not heaven and hell your creations? Are not heaven and hell your creations? When you drew hell and called it a hell, such the spot really became hell, because your words are true always. You drew that and you told that is hell. So your words became, it has to be true, just like your verse of curse has to be made true. So now you told this is hell and drew that picture and told this is hell. That really became hell because of your words. And when I rolled on it, it was real suffering of hell for me." Narada said so with deep faith. So that deep faith is important here. Narada said that with deep faith. That was why Vishnu said, "Be it so." So the faith is important. So do you believe that everything is happening according to the will of the Lord? Do you really believe? Or it is just some words? So if you do it with faith, real faith, then no sins will attach to you. If you think that every action of yours is happening according to the will of the Divine Mother or will of the Lord, then you will not be touched by sins or anything for that sake. You will not get bound. You will be liberated. But do you have that faith? That's very, very important. Let us ask our heart. You may just try to please me and tell that, "Oh, I have that faith." No, it is not so. It should come from the heart. You should mean it. So there should be no theft in the chamber, inner chamber. So that's what is important. So the master then told that, but Narada had to roll on that hell. That's why Vishnu said, be it so, because of his faith. But Narada had to roll on that hell, drawn on the ground with true devotion and faith. It was by making that little effort. So now beautifully now Ramakrishna is beginning, he made a little effort at least. So like that, we have to put some effort to realize God or set up a goal, whatever freedom is given to us. So it was by making that little effort that his suffering was annulled. Otherwise, he had to go to hell and suffer the hell there. But he made a little effort. That sadhana is our little effort to get out of this bondage of this world. So everybody has to do sadhana. That's why, because of his deep faith, Vishnu told, be it so. But Narada had to roll on the hell, drawn on the ground with true devotion and faith. It was by making that little effort that his suffering was annulled. The master explained to us from time to time, with the help of this story, how there was room for perseverance and individual effort in the realm of grace too. In the realm of grace, Ramakrishna is telling, in the realm of grace, how there was room for perseverance and individual effort in the realm of grace too. Ramakrishna has to explain that. So we have got a very great answer to many of the questions which were lurking in our mind. So many confusion about free will and God's will. So if you really feel, if you have that faith that everything is happening even now, even before realization according to the will of the God, you will get it. Just like see the story of Narada and other things, but that little effort, that is sadhana, is needed. At least he made the Lord to draw that picture and rolled on that, took the effort with devotion to roll on that. And that effort is what we do, sadhana, spiritual practice. Everything is happening according to the will of Lord. You have been given little freedom. Make use of the freedom. Then you will be given more freedom. Then that freedom, if you use more, then you get free, complete, eternal freedom. So we have to make little self-effort. So beautifully explained. So we will stop with the story here for the introduction. So we will go to the proper life of Sri Ramakrishna. So now the name of this chapter in this introduction to the, after the introduction, it would be the sadhaka, spiritual practice. In that, the subchapter is assumption of the office of the priest. Assumption of the office of the priest. The pleasing look of the master, his tender nature, his devoutness, and his youth attracted the notice of Mathur Babu, the Rani's son-in-law, who was active, who was really the master of everything, who was taking care of everything. Rani used to do all that work through him. So all that responsibility was his. So the pleasing looks of the master, his tender nature, his devoutness, and his youth attracted the notice of Mathur Babu, the son-in-law of Rani Rasamani, within a few weeks of the consecration of the temple. So you cannot hide yourself. Ramakrishna is moving about there. So their notice is drawing the attention because he's seeing that beautiful boy, youth of 19, pleasing looks of the master, the tender nature, his devoutness, and his youth attracted the notice of Mathur, the son-in-law of Rani Rasmani, within a few weeks of consecration of the temple. It is often seen that where an intimate and lasting relationship of love is forged, the attraction leading to it is felt at the first sight. The scriptures say that this arises from the impressions of the relationship we had in previous lives. So the moment we see some person, we develop some liking to him. So how is that? And some other people, when we see, we don't like at all. We want to just go away. So it is not of this life. The impressions have been carried from our many earlier lives. So that is the reason. So here, Shardanandaji Maharaj is explaining about that. The scriptures say that this arises from the impressions of the relationship we had in previous lives. When we reflect on the profoundly loving relationship that developed later between the master and Mathur, we are led to conclude that there arose an indefinable attraction in the mind of Mathur for the master from the very early days of their acquaintance. For a month after the temple was consecrated, the master lived at Dakshineshwar without any particular work or plan for the future. In the meantime, Mathur resolved to appoint him to dress up the goddess and discuss the matter with Ramkumar. Why, we can also ask our small Bhattacharya, the priest, small priest, the younger brother of Ramkumar. He can take up the responsibility of decorating. He need not do any tough job, just decorating the Lord. Mother, Divine Mother also. For a month after the temple was consecrated, the master lived at Dakshineshwar without any particular work or plan for the future. In the meantime, Mathur resolved to appoint him to dress up the goddess, so to decorate Mother Kali and discuss the matter with Ramkumar. He can help you doing the work. Ramkumar told him the whole story about the mental attitude of his brother. He knew Ramakrishna or Gadadhar was of a different mental state. So he told everything about him. We cannot force anything upon him. Ramkumar told him the whole story about his mental attitude of his brother and discouraged Mathur in this effort to carry out his plan. But Mathur was not a man to be easily deterred. Although his offer was thus discouraged, he waited for an opportunity to carry out his resolve. So Mathur was very man of willpower. Once he takes up something, he wants to do something, he will not give it up so easily. Another person intimately connected with the master's life came to Dakshineshwar about this time. Who is that? Hridayarama Mukhyopadhyaya. So very closely connected with master. So another person intimately connected with the master's life came to Dakshineshwar about this time. Hridayarama Mukhyopadhyaya, a son of master's cousin, a son of master's cousin Hemangini Devi, came to Vardhaman or Burdwan at that time in search of employment. He was then 16. For some time he stayed in Burdwan with his acquaintance from his own village, then residing in that town, but could find no way to the accomplishment of his purpose, finding a job or something. When he came to know that his maternal uncles were living in the new temple of Rani Rasmani and were held in great respect, he thought that there was every chance of his purpose being fulfilled if he would go there. So Hriday came to Dakshineshwar temple without delay and began to spend his time joyfully there in the company of Sri Ramakrishna, his uncle. They were nearly of the same age and familiar with each other from childhood. They were almost contemporary, nearly of the same age. Maybe Mathurnath was 1 year younger or something like that, or Ramakrishna maybe 1 year elder to him. They were nearly of the same age and familiar with each other from childhood. Hriday was tall, handsome, and of a manly build. His physique was firm and strong, and his mind extremely active and free from fear. He could undergo hard labor and adapt himself easily to any circumstances. He was resourceful and could surmount difficulties and adverse situations by inventing extraordinary means for the same. Moreover, he had a very tender and genuine affection for his youngest uncle and spared no pains to make him happy, even by undergoing endless troubles himself. Always active, Hriday had not a trace of contemplativeness in him. He was extrovert by nature. He was very practical, he was very hardworking. He used to be very resourceful, could surmount difficulties and adverse situation by inventing extraordinary means for the same. Extrovert, but very little contemplativeness. Always active, Hriday had not a trace of contemplativeness in him. Therefore, Hriday's mind, like those of all worldly people, could never be free from selfish urges. The more we discuss his relationship with the Master since the earliest days, the more shall we see that little contemplativeness and selfless effort seen in his life were all due to the constant company of the Master. Because he was in the constant company of the Master, through the Master, he started getting this contemplativeness or some effort, sadhana and everything because of the company of Ramakrishna himself. So now you can understand what is the use of satsanga, holy company. So when you are in the company of good people, then that goodness also will start seeping into your mind, and that will help you to go forward in spiritual life. So satsanga is very, very important. Mathurnath was of a different type, no contemplation, always extrovert, selfish. But due to the company of Sri Ramakrishna now, he's getting those qualities too. So was himself an embodiment of these virtues. So Master says, the more shall we see that the little contemplativeness and selfless effort seen in his life, that is our Hriday Ram's life, were all due to constant company of the Master, who was in himself an embodiment of these virtues. Hriday was sometimes in the habit of imitating him in this respect. The help of a man of action, courageous, reverential, and amiable, was very necessary for the success of the contemplative life of one who was indifferent to eating, drinking, and all other bodily needs, and who was altogether devoid of selfishness and ever absorbed in contemplation. That was Sri Ramakrishna. Was this the reason why Divine Mother brought a person like Hriday into the life of the Master at this initial stage of sadhana and establish a bond of deep and meaningful relationship between them? Who knows? It is, however, true that but for Hriday, it would have been impossible for him to keep body. So much of austerity, so much of tapasya, so much of very, very intense spiritual practices, the body of Ramakrishna would have collapsed. It would have gone. But for Hriday's presence there, looking after that body, taking care of him. So that may be the will of Divine Mother to bring Mathur there. Sorry, not Mathur, Hriday Ram. So that he can take care of the Master's body when he is in deep spiritual contemplation. Was this the divine reason why the Divine Mother brought a person like Hriday into the life of Master at this initial stage of sadhana and established a bond of deep and meaningful relationship between them? Who knows? It is, however, true that but for Hriday, it would have been impossible for him to keep that body and soul together during the period, during that intense sadhana, austerity. Therefore, his name remains eternally connected with the life of Sri Ramakrishna, and it deserves our heartfelt homage forever. The Master was 20 years and a few months old when Hriday came to Dakshineshwar. The Master was 20 years and a few months old when Hriday came to Dakshineshwar. We can easily infer that his life now became easy to some extent when he got a companion in Hriday, almost of the same age. So, and also his nephew, his relative. So it became easy to some extent when he got a companion in Hriday. Whatever he did from now on, bathing, walking, lying, sitting, etc., he did with his help. The doings of Sri Ramakrishna was always of the nature of a boy, appeared purposeless to the eyes of the ordinary people. But Hriday, far from criticizing them, approved of them heartily and sympathized with him. When you love a person, whatever his actions, you will approve of it. So for the external eyes, for the other people, the simple childlike nature and activities of Ramakrishna would have been looking like surprising or something peculiar. The doings of Sri Ramakrishna was always of the nature of a boy, appeared purposeless to the eyes of the ordinary people. But Hriday, far from criticizing them, approved of them heartily, and sympathized with him. This endeared him to the master. Hriday himself said to us, many a time I felt an indescribable attraction towards the master. Since then, you have to note this, many a times I felt an indescribable attraction towards the master since then. And I always remained with him like his shadow. Even a minute's separation from him was painful to me. I bathed with him, walked with him, sat with him, and lay down with him. We had to part for a while only at the time of taking our midday meals, for the master took from the temple stores rice and uncooked provisions which he cooked with his own hands. He took his food under the Panchavati while I had prasad in the temple. But I made all preparations for his cooking before I parted. His principle regarding food was so strict then that he felt uncomfortable even with self-cooked rice. At night, however, he used to take a little of us, he used to take, like all of us, the luchis. That is, luchi means puri, what we call puri, which is fried in oil. That name, when fried in ghee and some other little, done in a little different way, the same puri, what we call puri, is called as luchi in Bengal. So he used to take, like all of us, the luchis offered to the Mother of the Universe. I noticed on many occasions that his eyes became filled with tears when I took the luchi and heard him complain sorrowfully to the Divine Mother about his predicament. The Master himself also sometimes spoke to us about the events of those times. I felt extremely afflicted to think that I should have to take the food from a Kaivarta. Even many of the poor, indignant people did not come to the Kali temple of Rani Rasmani to take their food for that reason. As sufficient number of people could not be procured to take the cooked food offered to the deity, cows were fed with it and the rest had to be thrown into the river. But we heard both from him and Hriday that he had not to take food cooked by himself for long. So our impression is that he did so till he took charge as a priest of Kali temple, which he did in 2 or 3 months after the consecration of the temple. Hriday knew that the master loved him dearly. There was only one thing regarding him which Hriday could by no means understand. It was this. When he went to assist his elder uncle Ramkumar or to take a little rest for his midday meal or to witness the evening service in the temple, the master eluded him and disappeared for some time. He did not know where Sri Ramakrishna would go at that time. So all the time he would elude him and go somewhere. He could not find him in spite of a great deal of search. Asked about it on his return, after about a couple of hours, he did not give a clear reply but said, I was just near there about this place. At such time, on some days when Hriday went in search of him, he found him returning from the direction of the Panchavati. What is this Panchavati? Pancha means 5. Vata means trees. So 5 different types of very special trees. It is revered in Hindu religion, the 5 very, very special trees. And also according to Ayurveda, they have a lot of medicinal values. So those trees are planted in 5 different directions in a concentric circle. So now make a center. From there, you should have the same radius. So in that same radius, on the circumference of that circle, you have to plant the, the peepal tree towards the east. That is the direction where the sun rises. So Bilva Vriksha to the north. So like that in different directions, you have to plant the peepal tree, as I told you, the Ashwatha Vriksha, then Vata Vriksha, Bot, that is called the banyan tree in another direction. Then we have the Bilva towards the north. Then we have the Amalaka, the Indian gooseberry, Amalaka. It is not the gooseberry which is there in the Western countries. Here in South Africa, gooseberry is different. There the Indian gooseberry is Amalaka. It's highly medicinal in use. It's very, very highly medicinal. And also recently I read this journal, scientific journal, in which it was written that now all the trees, they release some sort of chemicals or gas from it. We all know that oxygen is given by the trees. A lot of oxygen, it will absorb the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and gives out oxygen, and also it releases the water contents, humidity. That water content from this thing will be released through the under this thing of the leaf. There is stomata. From that, the water, this thing will come out, and the oxygen and everything. So together with that, each tree has some peculiar or particular chemicals or gas which it releases. So some tree may have ill effect or bad effect. So you should not go towards that tree or near that tree. Just like the tamarind tree. If you inhale or if you leave under the tamarind tree for a long time, you'll start seeing hallucination. So the gas produced by that tree will create hallucination. You'll see, so that's why many people in India, they complain when they go near the tamarind tree, they see some ghosts and other things. It's not really, it's all hallucination produced by the chemicals or the gas produced by the tamarind tree. That's why tamarind tree is not used. Only the tamarind fruit is used for cooking. And also the flowers are used for, sometimes even the leaves are used for cooking. But the wood is not used for cooking. The wood, firewood of the tamarind is not used. That will be used only in making bricks and tiles and some other things. So they don't cook food. They don't even heat the water for bathing. Earlier, there was no electric and gas stove, so it was all the firewood. So tamarind would not be used for cooking and also for bathing and other purposes, because the gas produces some sort of hallucination, and it may spoil your health too. So that's why they don't go under a tamarind tree. They don't stay under the tamarind tree for a long time. So these things are there. Our Rishi Munis knew about all those things. But the recent findings, which I read some 10, 15 years back, was the amalaka, the Indian gooseberry, the amalaka. So that tree produces that particular gas or this thing. If you inhale that for a long time, it increases your memory power. But in our scriptures, it is written, if you sit and meditate under the amalaka tree, so whatever desire you have to realize that, your concentration will improve and you will realize that. So that is the thing written in Skanda Purana and so many other Puranas. So Ramakrishna had known that. So he had planted all this Panchavati and all. Also he had planted a separate amalaka tree under which Ramakrishna used to sit and meditate. So that increases your memory power. It increases that concentration of your mind. So now this Panchavati has these 5 trees. One is towards the east is the people tree, that is the Ashwatha. Then in another direction is the banyan tree. Then another direction is, north direction is the Bilva tree. Bilva, you know that. Then in another direction is the Amalaka. Then one more is the Ashoka Vriksha. Ashoka Vriksha is the one which we use it for the decoration and other things in the house. They name it as Ashoka because the leaf is very similar. But Ashoka Vriksha is that Vriksha where we all know that in Ramayana, Mother Sita was living in Ashoka Vana. So there all the trees were this Ashoka Vriksha. So that is a very highly medicinal and very useful plant. So all these 5, Ashoka Vriksha, people tree, banyan tree, then this Bilva tree, then this Amalaka. So all 5 put on the same radius of the circle, from the same center, concentric circle. So then in different direction. So you make a hut or something for sitting on the meditation in the center. So that is good for meditation, for spiritual sadhana. So it is given in the Puranas, in some this thing, Skanda Purana, or I don't remember now, but it is there. It may come now in future here in this book itself, which Purana it is given. And also, other than this simple Panchavati, there is some more mandala, Brihat Panchavati. That is in 6 acres of land. You put it in different mandalas, all these trees. Anybody passing through the mandala or that park where all these trees are put in different direction, his health will improve. So many diseases will be cured. So all that is there in our scriptures. So now we shall see Ramakrishna used to go sit under this Panchavati and meditate. So as such, At such times, on some days when Hriday went in search of master, he found him returning from the direction of Panchavati. And he thought that he had gone there perhaps to answer calls of nature and did not ask him anything more. This is what Hriday said. Once at that time, the master had a mind to make an image of Lord Shiva for worship. We have already said that sometimes he did this in his childhood at Kamarpukur. As soon as there arose the desire in his mind, so anything, any good desire arises in the mind of master, he would immediately put into practice. No delays, no postponing, no procrastination. So I told you the story of Ramayana end when Ravana was dying. So at that time, Rama sent Lakshmana to get some advice from him. And what was the advice given? Because Rama himself told a dying man will always tell the truth, will tell the truth. And he was a great Gnani. He was well versed in Vedas. He was well versed in so many Shastras. But he did some bad things, so he had to die. But he was a great Gnani. Before the man dies, you have to get some good advice. And what was the advice given by Ravana to Lakshmana through Ramachandra? The Lord Ramachandra himself asked him to give that advice. What was that? Shubhasya Shigram, Ashubhasya Kalaharanam. Do not ever postpone good things. Go on postponing bad things. But we do the reverse. All the bad things we do very quickly. But all the good things we go on procrastinating, go on postponing. So, but the nature of our master Ramakrishna, you can see Shubhasya Shigram. Do it quickly, anything, any good thing. So he had a desire to make the image of Lord Shiva and worship it. We've already said that sometimes he did this in childhood, that is making images and worshipping it. In Kamarpukur, as soon as there arose that desire in his mind, he took some earth from the bed of the river, himself went to the bed of the river, Ganga. So there will be clay that is very suitable for making images. So he bought that clay. As soon as the desire arose, he never kept quiet, went on. Many people, many devotees, whom we call the devotees of Ramakrishna, we have this nature of procrastination and postponing the things. So when we have the Ishtadevata as Ramakrishna, we should never do that postponing things. Any good things have to be done very quickly. So that is what Ramakrishna had that. See here, any good thing, any good desire arises in his mind, he immediately puts it into practice. As soon as that desire arose in his mind, he took some earth from the bed of the river, made with his own hand an image of Shiva, together with the bull Nandi and Tabor, etc., and began to worship him in that image. He made a beautiful image, bought that clay from Ganga, put all that beautiful paint or anything, good natural paints, and made a beautiful image of Lord Shiva. It was so perfect and beautiful. He was expert in that, making images. All Nandi, Tabor, all the Trishula, Jadadhar, Shiva. So it was so beautiful, and he started worshipping it and began to worship Lord Shiva in that image. Mathur happened to come there in the course of the stroll, and eager to learn what deity the master was worshipping intently, approached and saw that image. Though not big, the image was beautiful. Mathur was delighted to see it. He felt that images so expressive of divine nature. Mathur saw that, and he examined, and he found that he felt that images so expressive of divine nature were not available in the market. It was so beautiful. It was so expressive of that divinity in that image. You couldn't find such thing in the market. Even the experts who used to do regularly, who were always doing that images, could not bring so much of expression of the Lord in the face, in the body. So Mathur felt that images so expressive of divine nature were not available in the market. He then asked Hriday, out of curiosity, where have you got this image from? Did you buy it? Did you get it from the market? Who has made it? He was astonished to know from Hriday that the master knew how to make images of deities and to set broken parts of images. He requested that the image might be given over to him after the worship. So he requested Hriday, can you please give that image to me after the worship, after Master finishes the worship? Please give that image to me, Mathur asked, requested Hriday. So where have you got that image from? Who has made it? He was astonished to know from Hriday that the master knew how to make images of deities and to set broken parts of images also. He requested that the image might be given over to him after the worship. Hriday agreed and with the permission of the master took the image when the worship was over and gave it to Mathur. When Mathur got the image, he looked at it very minutely and being charmed with it, sent it on to the Rani to see. She too was highly pleased with it and expressed surprise, like Mathur, on knowing that the master had made it. Some say that this event happened after master had assumed the office of the priest, and Mathur showed the image to the Rani saying, the goddess will soon become awakened as we have got such a competent priest. Now, even shortly before this incident, the idea of appointing the master for temple duties had dawned in the mind of Mathur. That idea became stronger when he became acquainted now with this rare accomplishment of the master. The master had already heard from his brother of that intention of Mathur, but ignored it, as he had made a firm resolve from childhood that he would not serve anyone but God. He would not take service from anybody. He would not serve anybody other than God. We heard the master express on many occasions this opinion about taking service. The master did not hold in high regard anybody who served another without being hard-pressed by need. Once, when he came to know that one of his boy devotees had taken service, he felt much pained and was heard to say, I feel more pain to hear that he has taken service than to hear he were dead. When the master met him later and knew that he had taken service for the maintenance of his helpless old mother, he said, passing his hand affectionately over his head and body, there is no harm in that. You are not to blame when you have taken service for that purpose. But had you done so without the compulsion of any such duty, just for earning money and luxuries, but merely for acquiring money for selfish indulgences, sense indulgences, I could not have touched you, and more so, I say, my Niranjan has not the slightest anjan stain in him. Why should it be so low? So that was the attitude of Sri Ramakrishna towards taking service. So only to maintain your family, or if you have the needs to maintain your father and mother, then only you can take service. Otherwise, your attitude should be always serving the Lord. This is only for the sadhakas. You should note that Ramakrishna is telling for the higher would be sannyasins. So for other householders, yes, if they have desires, you can take service, but he deemed it as low for the sake of sensual enjoyments, for the sake of just gratification of the senses and enjoyments. If you take service under somebody and that earning money for that sake, so for them to go forward in spiritual life will be a little difficult. That is why Ramakrishna used to express that attitude. So now I think you have to stop the conversation or the discussion on the great master, because we have almost covered our time. We have just 5 minutes for 8 o'clock. So we will give this time for question and answers and also clearing of the doubts. So if you have any questions or doubts, you can please ask. If you have any questions, yes, yes, please tell.
Madhu, yeah. So, just a bit confused with the last point, Maharaj, about taking the service. But you did say for the householder, it is fine. But to progress further in spiritual life,
for sannyasin, that's what I told. It was for sannyasin. Niranjan would become the future sannyasin. For him, just like we can't take service. We can do all the work, We have to do all the work. Maybe we will be in the ashram, we will be doing so much of work, but not for money. It is for the pleasing the Lord, service of the Lord. So for sannyasis, that thing was for the sannyasis who want to go intensely in spiritual life.
But even householders, if they want to progress in spirituality, even for householders,
you can make all the arrangement for your family, for your father and mother, to look after your children, and then you can concentrate on that. Okay. Your duty as a householder is to look after your father and mother, your children, your wife, and other people of the family. So if you do that earning of the money for your only sense gratification, that is wrong. But instead of that, you do little, whatever. But the rest of the money can be used for the service of the society, to help the poor people. Then that is also sadhana. You are not doing it for the sake of your own sense gratification, for your selfishness. If you can use that for the pilgrims, for the devotees, for the poor people, for the hospital, for the diseased, so that also can be sadhana, isn't it? So you are trying to see the Lord in them and do that. So it's the attitude which counts. Are you earning money just for yourself gratification, sense gratification and enjoyment, selfishness? Then that is wrong. So we have to always catch the spirit. We have to always read between the lines. So you have to catch the spirit of what Ramakrishna is telling.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Any other doubts? I think today people may not have any doubt or any questions. So then I shall end the session by the prayer. Om Priyatam Pundarikakshaha Sarvayagneshwaro Harihi Tasmin Tushte Jagat Tushtam Prenite Prenitam Jagat Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.